Good afternoon, good morning, good day. I am your host, Patrick D. McCoy, and welcome to this very special edition of Across the Arts. Today, we are joined by conductor Wayne Marshall for the Maestro series. As you know, we've hosted many great conductors, musicians, and the like on Across the Arts. And before we get into it with our special guest today, I would like to make a brief introduction. British conductor, organist, and pianist Wayne Marshall is world renowned for his musicianship and versatility on the podium and at the keyboard. He served as chief conductor of the WDR Funkhaus Orchestra Cologne, became principal guest conductor of Orchestra Sinfonica di Milano Giuseppe Verdi in 2007, and is a celebrated interpreter of Gershwin, Bernstein, and other 20th century composers. He's pretty accomplished, isn't he? And there's more. Plans for the 21-22 season include his conducting debut with the Munich Philharmonic and the Osaka Philharmonic Orchestras, just to name a few. His conducting highlights include his widely praised new production of Porgy and Bess at the Theater an der Wien, Tonkünstler Orchestra, Czech Rotterdam, also in the Strasbourg Philharmonic Orchestras. And of course, he's well known for his touring with the Prague Radio Philharmonic and UK touring with Chineke and the BBC Singers. Now, of course, I mention him as a conductor, but also as an organ reciter. He is exceptionally varied in his repertoire and performs worldwide and online audiences. And as you may have seen, even on Facebook, during this pandemic. I can go on and on and on about this great maestro, but please welcome the incomparable Wayne Marshall. Good day, Maestro Wayne.
Hey, Patrick. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you, and thank you very much indeed for inviting me on your show today. Great.
Well, let me tell you something, Maestro. This has been a long time coming because I have admired you from afar. I'm always on your lives. And you know, all of these conversations that I have, I must start out with talking about the pandemic. Now, of course, I knew who you were, and I had seen performances of you with Porgy and Bess, especially with my dear friend, soprano Angela Renee Simpson, who I've seen many times you perform with her. But I knew you from that realm. But when the pandemic hit and you started, coming on with these Facebook Lives and your organ recitals, first of all, I just want to go back a little bit and just say, how did the pandemic personally affect you?
Well, I mean, like everybody else, I mean, it was a musician. I mean, it was, I remember I was first of all, in LA last year, and then I flew to Philadelphia. I played at the where's the hall now? The Great Hall in Philadelphia with David
Kimmel
Briggs.
Center.
Kimmel, that's the one. Yeah, brain is not working today.
That's okay.
And then after that, then I flew to London and on to Moscow. And I mean, in the States at that time, I mean, there'd been nothing really seriously taken, as far as COVID was concerned. But in Europe, it was obviously a much bigger deal. And my wife was sort of telling me, oh, this is a big situation going on, in Europe. But anyway, I flew to London, and then my flight to Moscow was very, very sort of empty. And in Moscow, like in the United States, I mean, everything was more or less like normal. But then I flew back to Frankfurt because I had a concert to conduct there, and the flight was again, fairly empty. And then situation was obviously, a lot of discussion going on about COVID in Germany. And then when I flew back to Moscow on the Sunday after the concert, after the rehearsal, I had to fly back to the rehearsal. No, after the concert, because I had the concert in Moscow, the airport was empty. I mean, I've never seen Frankfurt Airport looking so empty. I mean, I was there 2 hours before, but I could arrive 20 minutes before the flight and got it no problem.
Wow, that's a positive part of it.
Yeah, it was quite alarming. But anyway, I flew back to back home on the 11th of March last year, and when I arrived home, that's when all all the situation started to unfurl itself, because the phone was ringing constantly, and concerts were being cancelled, postponed, you name it. So it was like everybody else. I mean, this, the cliff sort of cliff edge was there, and you were just sort of like almost falling over it. That's basically it.
I kind of want to go back since you did mention Kimmel Center and that organ recital. A dear friend of mine, another organist, his name is H.L. Smith. He was at that concert. And when I saw the picture with you and David Briggs and Olivier Latry, it was at the same concert. I was just like, oh my goodness, these three giants. Talk to me about, I mentioned the fact that you're a great conductor, you're a pianist, and as I just mentioned, an organist. How do you compartmentalize those three aspects of your musicianship? Like, how do you make the transition from you just conducted this concert, but now you have to play an organ recital and so forth? How do you make that transition?
Well, Patrick, I mean, I'm a musician. I mean, I started as a pianist, and then I, started, became an organist and then conductor. But I mean, now my days are spent, really spent between conducting and organ playing. So that's basically that's the sort of path I've chosen. I mean, I'm not one of these great virtuoso concert pianists. I never really was quite like that. But as an organist, I mean, the way I've been able to sort of use my piano technique has, that's taken me in a different kind of road. I mean, I was always a church musician, but the appeal of actually playing organ concerts was probably much more appealing in that sense. I mean, I was I had a sort of great intention to be a cathedral organist, but then all that changed when back in 1986 when I went to Glyndebourne Opera, and then Porgy and Bess and World of Opera, and then conducting, and that was then the next road that I went down, basically.
So since we stopped there about you talked about Porgy and Bess and that point, I had the opportunity to be at opening night at the Met at the recent performance of Porgy and Bess. So sometimes people have these different discussions, in view of whether it is a great opera, or do Black singers in particular to get pigeonholed in that particular piece. What are your thoughts on Porgy and Bess in terms of its validity in the canon of opera?
Well, it's a very serious piece of music. I mean, and it is an opera. It is not a musical.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, George Gershwin was a very serious composer, irrespective of what a lot of people think or thought about him. I mean, and it's a piece which is very, very it's a modern day piece as well, because I mean, it deals with all the situations that that the world is ravaged with at the moment, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. But I think that the piece for me represents a period where Gershwin, in a way, sort of went away from what people were what people would normally associate with him as being a great songwriter. But here we have a composer who really delved into a world which was very, very, very advanced. I mean, you look at the piece, and all sorts of different musical genres are involved in Porgy. You've got jazz, you've got blues, you've got even rap is in there as well, gospel. It's all there. I mean, Gershwin went down to the, South Carolina, and he wanted to sort of, to soak up the culture of what was going on down there. And he reproduced this fantastic opera. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it's a long opera. It's about 3 hours if you, play every note. But I mean, for me, there are some scenes in it which are so far removed from the sort of normal aspects of what George Gershwin was all about. For instance, Act 2, Scene 3, the scene before the storm, the big storm scene. It's the writing is so different. It's like nothing else that he ever wrote, and I love it. I mean, it's a great piece, and as I said, it's a piece which has to be taken seriously.
I just want to continue that, because I want to go back to when I saw the production at the Met. I mean, it was so thrilling. And the main thing for me, I just was so ecstatic to witness all of that Black excellence, not just on the stage, but the many people of color, particularly our Black brothers and sisters who were out at the opera that night and opening night. It was just a beautiful sight. But I do want to go back to something because, as you can tell, I definitely have a penchant for the organ, and you truly inspire me with your organ playing. I want to talk a little bit about that. But talk to me and the listeners and the viewers about that great picture behind you.
This one. Let's see. Let's get it in the camera. Yeah. Well, I was organ scholar at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, back in 1980 to 83. And that's a photograph of me there at the great console up on the screen. A friend of mine, interior designer, wanted to take a really spectacular black and white photograph. And this is it, and of course I'm all of about 21 in that photograph, I suppose I'm 60 now on the photograph on the left there. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic photograph, but also I had a really amazing time at Windsor. I mean, it was in conjunction with my studies at the Royal College of Music in London, where I was a student. I was there for 4 years basically, but then St. George's was part of that. At least it became part of it. So I was, from the second year to my fourth year, then I was living in Windsor basically. And I mean, my duties as an organ scholar were to play for the chapel services in conjunction with the assistant organist, to assist with the chapel music, and as being part of the community of Windsor, it obviously, it was a very special place to be. I mean, I lived in the castle, had a flat there. Yeah, that was fantastic, right in front of the chapel. And of course, I met the royal family several times. I mean, the royal family used to attend the chapel at least 3 times officially during the year: Christmas, Easter, and for the Garter Day ceremony, which is a great, big ceremony, which is always held on the second Monday in June. And then, as I said, at Christmas, we would always, saunter up to the upper ward where the royal family used to reside, and the choir would sing some carols on a very sort of casual, evening of, and it was great, but that was how that was. And, I mean, I did play for a couple of royal events as well, and participated in the Garter Day ceremonies and so on. But it was a wonderful experience for me, because, I mean, I had quite a bit of experience before I went to Windsor. I was an organ scholar at Manchester Cathedral, so the English church repertoire I knew quite well. So I sort of, slotted into it and really enjoyed it. And I mean, I had 3 years there as opposed to 2. So I was very lucky, because there was not another student ready at that time when I was due to leave, actually, or should have left. So I was able to stay on the next year. I mean, basically, I just didn't want to leave Windsor and then go to live in London again. I just wanted to stay. So I said, but anyway, it all just worked in my favor for that. But that was it. But it was a great experience and time in Windsor as organ scholar. Yeah.
That sounds truly extraordinary. And I want to kind of go all the way back now, because when I talk to great artists like you, I don't want to, sometimes we take for granted that everybody knows everything about the person. So I want you to take me back, because I learned some things about you and the influence of your family just when I was talking to Maestro Rudder, because you mentioned your sister and her beautiful voice, and how her voice really got him out of a pinch with the Cambridge Singers. So I want you to talk to me, take me back. You can give me the abridged version, if you will, but talk to me about your family and how your family really formed that center of nurture for you as a musician.
Well, very much so, actually, Patrick, because I mean, my parents, first of all, they came they emigrated from Barbados in the Caribbean to the UK, to Oldham near Manchester. So, and that's where they've been living ever since, basically. And of course, they've always been strong church-going people. And I mean, I have 2 sisters also. But at that time, in the early 60s, I mean, life was very different from what it is now. No smartphones, internet, you name it. So life was very much centered around, people, and church was very, very important. Church is always full, and it was a very different upbringing. And my parents, of course, were very strict. We had to, especially my father, he wanted us to be, academically sound as well, and we had to speak properly. I mean, that's also very, very important. I mean, we lived in an area where in the north of England where there's a very strong dialect, and my father refused absolutely categorically that we had to speak the Queen's English no matter what. So when we were at home, we spoke the Queen's English, and when we were at school, we spoke like that. How they taught like that. So that was it. But there was no way. But anyway,
well, please forgive me for my southern drawl.
no, your southern drawl is fantastic. That's you. That's you. But no, I mean, it was hard as a child because obviously I was very shy, because of that. But the music was a very, very important intrinsic part of our family. And I remember every Sunday, that we'd be at church, and during the week sometimes my father would invite the organist of the church to come round and go through the music for Sunday. It was a great time. Of course, I always wanted to sit down and play and try to play like him, and all these sort of things. I was so keen, and practicing was never an issue for me because I just used to sit at the piano and practice for hours on end. The only problems became for me were when I was told not to practice. So that's when the tantrums would start. But yeah, I mean, the music has always been very strong, and I think that was a very strong pillar for me because, as I said, my parents didn't have the kind of education we did. So, they wanted to make sure that we were very well, taken care of in terms of the education. And as hard as it was for me then to understand, I mean, now, as a father, now in my, this time, it means a lot to me. And I can really see how they were trying to nurture us and to build a kind of foundation for us, for life. Very, very important.
That is just amazing, and I like that whole idea again of the whole, the importance of family, and a lot of times, as you mentioned, even here in the States, a lot of times the speaking correctly in all settings, sometimes that's a lost art. So thank you for mentioning that. Now, if you don't mind, I kind of want to move ahead. I mentioned you as an organist and as a pianist, but I want to talk to you a little more about your career as a conductor. And so I do want to play this clip for the audience. And then if you would just unpack it a little bit more. But this is you conducting Chineke. And I think I won't play the whole thing, but just a little. So let me. As you know, with these virtual experiences and sharing screens and things, it's a chore. So audience, listeners, please bear with me 1 second. See, can I find
I'll talk to you about Zoom.
We'll talk. Oh, here it is, right here, I think. Oh, here we go. All right. I think we're on the right track now. There we go. Compare the computer sound, share. And this is just going to be a snippet. I'm gonna stop about right there because I don't want YouTube to snatch my video down, this wonderful interview. But first of all, before I even get into the music, what was it like for you? First of all, I'm gonna tell you my impression. I see this brother up there conducting this orchestra, and it is such a beautiful sight. So I want to know from you, how did that make you feel to walk out on stage with all of these accomplished artists of color comprising this orchestra?
Yeah, it was a fabulous experience. I mean, just to have an orchestra like that, of all these brilliant musicians. I mean, they're all fantastic musicians. And what I always remember, of course, is the first rehearsal. I mean, the first rehearsal was really, touch and go, because there wasn't, we didn't have the full complement, first of all, but, it was a work in progress. And that was what was so fascinating. We had plenty of time to rehearse, and every day, it got better and better, and more people arrived. And, it was, and then of course, I remember the day of the concert itself, or even the night before, when we had a kind of dress rehearsal. It was very, very exciting. We'd reached the sort of peak, really. And I remember telling the musicians, I said, look, tomorrow's concert is the first rehearsal. That's it. This is the first rehearsal. That's the beginning. This is the beginning. This is where we start. Now we move on from here. And we had to sort of sow the foundations. As I said, it was a wonderful experience of, but as I said, to have an orchestra that's all made up of Black and ethnic minority musicians, for me, was an honor, because it was in a way that a lot of orchestras are not really represented in that way. And so for me, it was wonderful to be associated with this orchestra. And they're all fantastic musicians. As I said, just need this opportunity to be more exposed to the general public, to show that but there are musicians of color who can actually perform as well.
And of course, it was founded by Chichi Wanaku in 2015. This is her brainchild, and of course, under the foundation as well. So, I mean, it is amazing, and just to see that excellence again, I can't stress it enough. It's just totally something that many of us just appreciate by seeing that. Now, I want to go now. I know I keep hammering this pandemic, but you and I had a chance to talk, because I was mentioned to you, I saw some of your organ recitals, and it just really brought you even more so before the public. But I want you to talk more in depth about this amazing technology, and even demonstrate if you can, because you showed me some things with your cameras and your technology that I had never seen before.
Okay, well, as I said, when I returned home from Moscow back last March, of course, I had, my wife Jennifer told me, Sunday night, told me, Wayne, you're going to go live on Facebook. I mean, I knew nothing about Facebook. I never used social media. Didn't really sort of, wasn't really interested. But I had to, up my game. So, we found this, Jennifer really found this software, OBS Studio. We sort of talked to a friend of ours in Seattle as well, who, a very good colleague, and he helped us with sorting out how you could use this broadcasting software with Facebook. So yeah, the first concert I went live, from here, and had no lighting, just one. I think I just used the webcam from in my computer, I think, on my laptop. So it was all dark and the sound wasn't great, But anyway, it was a start. And then then of course we all thought that the pandemic was going to be just a few weeks or a month or so. But no, it went on and on. So, I had to sort of, get a little bit more technically savvy with everything. So, yeah, I mean, I had to then started to buy some more webcams. I mean, not the kind of webcams that you're looking at now, but it was a sort of stage. So I got the next level up, and then I got some lighting, and just started to really improve my. I mean, I've always been interested in audio recording anyway. But how you use it with OBS and with social media, it took a long time to really get it absolutely. But I just started to be very, very obsessed with it. I mean, on our Sala Nobile here, our big room here, was more often than not, especially last year, looking like a television recording studio. Wires, cables everywhere. The piano lid was always up with microphones and cameras, and and every Sunday, of course, I would broadcast a concert from here. So it was like a weekly ritual. So the cameras remain up there. I'd be thinking about what I was going to be doing, and sometimes I get my children involved. My wife was involved as well, just to playing it. And then at the cathedral, the St. Paul's Anglican Cathedral, which is just behind me. And by the way, everybody, I live in Malta, which is just below Sicily in Italy, and a small island here. And there is an Anglican cathedral just literally behind our house in the next block. And there's a very fine 3-manual organ there. And the priest of the cathedral was quite keen for me to record the Easter the Easter Triduum, the masses for Easter. So it
Mhm.
started with Passion Sunday, then Palm Sunday, then Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, etc. And so I then, took my equipment to the cathedral, and because of the pandemic, because the cathedral was closed, so I was able to take my big recording equipment into the cathedral and leave it there. So the cathedral was also looking like a recording studio, and yeah, it was just amazing. And of course, I got to know the organ much better than before, because of course I was playing it more regularly. And so yeah, so I started all this, and then I bought more webcams, and and then lighting, and then with the technology, it became much more knowledgeable of it. And as I said, I enjoy the recording. I mean, I've had some good, I think one of the keys to it is having some good microphones. I use Neumann KM 183s, 184s for those who are interested in the specification of things. I record everything on my Tascam DR100 digital recorder, but at least that's how I used to do it. But now, of course, I record on the computer, so it's easy just to record files, and everything just goes clips into that. And even for this Zoom broadcast, now I mean we can talk about the medium for recording. Zoom is the worst when it comes to music, because
Mm.
it's not so it just, because everything is so compressed.
Mhm.
But so when you're broadcasting on Facebook, it's much better, because then it's much higher quality. But with OBS, of course, you can use many cameras. So I can show you here. I fade in this kind of basic look here.
Wow.
And I'm using microphones. I mean, the piano is shut, so I don't even have proper piano microphones. But um, not the best sound, but because I don't have microphones on the piano. But these are two Audio Technica AT2020 microphones here, which are very good for vocal reproduction. And I use also what do you use? Yes, wireless Go microphones, lavalier mics. When but I didn't want to use those today. I just wanted to use these microphones. So it's been a journey, as I said, to use all this technology and get to use it, and I think it's fun, and it's important, really, in especially during this time, that that since this pandemic, of course, the internet has become our friends in a much bigger way than before. So people have been broadcasting and recording and making so on. I mean, the iPhone is not really the best medium for making audio recordings, because again, like Zoom, it's always not really possible, but it's not really perfect. But I mean, if you use your iPhone with a audio converter, like a AD converter, then it's also very good too. You can use microphones, and as long as you can feed the audio into your iPhone, it's much better. But get some good microphones. That's the real key to it, and just really make good recordings. I mean, you watch television enough times, and you see how they do it. Just copy what they do, mimic it, and make it look good. I mean, I spent
Hmm.
ages setting up for everything. Lights. The lights I use for this, are not proper video lights. They're just lights which you put on the ceiling, for instance. But they're like €30 each, and I mean, you just hang them from a stand, and then they do the same job. But lighting is very, very important with making good recordings as well, audio, visual recordings. So it can be done. You can do it. And you can spend a lot of money on 4K. Very expensive HD cameras. Webcams, or even XLR cameras. So there's SLR cameras, I should say. Yeah. So there's a lot to it, but you've got to be interested enough in it to really go all the way to really make good recordings. And there's nothing worse than having a bad recording to look at or to listen to. I can't stand. No.
Well, let me ask you this. So now that we're moving somewhat out of the pandemic, how much of the technology will you keep as a part of your performances? Will you still remain teaching, online, or doing the online organ recitals, or some kind of hybrid model? How do you see this continuing?
Oh, it's going to continue, Patrick, because something has started, and it's going to be very difficult to just suddenly switch that off. I mean, we all know now. I think we're more aware of what is what's out there with recording. Uh, Obviously, yes, as you mentioned, the pandemic is kind of coming to a sort of conclusion in some kind
I
of
know,
way.
yeah.
Well, well, yeah, he says, yeah, but we all know that I mean, okay, concerts will start again, and then I'm very optimistic that they will. But I think we will not lose the touch of how to make these personal recordings, and it's quite nice. I mean, I love it. When I go traveling, I take my gear with me. Some of it, and I have different versions of things. So I'm able to make a broadcast. It's not always possible to do things with internet because unless there's really good Wi-Fi or good Ethernet cable to make a good recording, you've got to be very careful. But at least, as I said, recording with a computer with webcams is good, and it's just nice. I mean, I sometimes just go live and say, oh, hi everybody, I'm here, I'm doing this, and blah blah. Put it up on Facebook, and people love it. They like to
Yes.
see all these things, yeah. Because before, you never used to see that, and I mean, I would love to go further with it. And for instance, like when I'm taking an orchestral rehearsal, and just put a webcam up and have a live mic and so talk about how because people found it fascinating. And I mean, I did when I was conducting Paul Best in Vienna last year. I did actually, I had a little session with a couple of the musicians there, and people found it fascinating. So yes, there's all sorts of things. I think we just have to just keep at it. I think.
I think I mentioned to you the fact one of those similar videos you were playing the Bach, the Prelude and Fugue in A minor, and you didn't
Yes.
just play it, you were teaching about it, and I love that. So, this up close and personal aspect of the pandemic in terms of these social media presentations, it's something that we really did enjoy before. We get to experience a great artist like you and how you really think, and it's so transparent. So first of all, I want to thank you for that, for sharing that part of yourself. Now, I want to go to something else. I mean, we talked about a lot of different things, and forgive me from all over the place, but I'm just excited and I'm nervous. But I want to ask you if
You're not nervous. Why are you what nervous? What are you nervous about?
Believe it or not, people say, Patrick, you why are like you just asked, like, why are you nervous? Like, well, you still have to talk to you're talking to these great artists.
Listen, I'm just a normal man, Patrick. For quite, please call me Maestro. Just call me Wayne. I'm just a normal man.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Wayne. You all heard it here first.
That's my name. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So just before I go any further, you have a lot of people on here who are giving you greetings. I want to give a shout out to Kenneth Overton. He's on watching right now, and Lester Green and Leah Hawkins. And there's a wonderful countertenor. I don't know if you've heard him yet. His name is Key Mura. He just won one. He look him up. He's watching you, and a few others, Miss Maureen. But when I was about to go, before I gave those shout outs, I had mentioned to you in my notes, if you had a desert island composer, who would be your desert island composer?
Ooh, that's a difficult question because I mean, I don't have a favorite composer, but no, that's very difficult to answer. Actually, I'm not even going to attempt to answer.
I understand, but since I did mention the organ, and those who are watching, I definitely have a penchant for it because it's something that I truly enjoy and it's a passion. But I do want to play this clip. I think I queued it up a bit of you playing the prelude. Here it is right here. So let's try this, and then we'll kind of round out. Let's see here. Uh-oh. Let's see. Oh, here it is. So we're gonna share, and we're gonna. So I want to talk about something that we kind of mentioned. I thought was fascinating because you were mentioned about your facility at the piano and how you kind of juxtapose it in terms of your facility at the organ. Now I was just having a conversation with somebody. They was like, Patrick, if a person can play the piano, can't they play the organ? And I'm like, it's a different, kind of touch. So I thought that was amazing in the beginning when you're talking about, playing the piano and things like that. How do you make that adjustment as far as your touch? Because I know with the organ, of course, you have the substitutions and making things connected. What is your approach? Like, for instance, when you were teaching in that video?
Well, for me, I mean, the real instrument where technique has to be learned is the piano, because there you learn to, all the different physical experiences of playing the keyboard, the soft, the louds, the legato, the staccato, and all the sort of muscular, the physicality of playing. I mean, the organ keyboard is basically just a keyboard which is just like a series of switches, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And the sounds, of course, of the organ are not created by the keyboard, or by the fingers, but they're created by the stops, the registers. They create the sound. But still, one has to have the technical facility to be able to play the keyboard and make the instrument work. And this is why the piano is so important. And you can't be a good organist and not be a good pianist. It's absolutely impossible, because you have to have the facility. So I bring to the organ this pianistic facility, and that's what I thrive on, basically.
That is amazing. So, Wayne, as we wrap up, first of all, I want to say thank you for being open to this conversation with me. It is very special, and I hope one of these days I'll get to see you live in the flesh. Um, so, as I wrap up, I always kind of tailor the end of the interview towards someone who is a young person or an aspiring person trying to find their way uh, in this profession, whether it is as a conductor, a pianist, or whatever it may be. But especially when I'm having an audience with a person, I know you said that you're just Wayne, but to someone watching and admiring your career, they may want to get to your level. What kind of advice would you give to an aspiring artist in this field?
Practice, dedication, and will, and wanting to do it, to really believe in what you want to do. But as I said, practice, that means a lot of hours sat at your instrument and working hard without any kind of excuses about it. It's there's no easy way to play an instrument, or to become a singer. You have to really work like hell with it. and you've got to want to do it as well. This is the thing. I mean, you've got to want to do it, and you have to be dedicated. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's the only way I know. That's how I was. And I wanted to practice, and I wanted to, I knew what I wanted to be, and that's it. So it's not an easy road. I mean, I've not had my career has not just always been plain sailing as well, I can tell you. But there have been times when, I'm not saying I wanted to give up, but when you have no money. I mean, when I finished my studies in Vienna in '83 and returned to the UK, I had no money, nowhere to live, and struggling, trying to find concerts, and it was very difficult. But I just knew that things would happen, and one by one, things, I got a teaching job, and then people would ask me to go and play for services, and then it led to one thing and the other, and that's that's it. But as I said, it's not the same for everybody. But I think these basic things of just wanting to do it, what you want to do, and believing in it, but working hard, practicing for hours, and really getting as good as you can. That's there's no substitute for that.
Well, again, Wayne, thank you so much for joining me today on the Maestro series. And again, to the listeners, we've been listening to conductor, organist, and pianist Wayne Marshall. And it's been such a joy on the Maestro series. I hope that you will subscribe to Across the Arts on YouTube as well as on Facebook. Next week, I will begin finally the Maestra series. And this will be the series that focuses on female women conductors on the podium. And I'll be joined by Chicago-based conductor and composer Renee Baker. Again, I am Patrick D. McCoy. You have been watching Across the Arts, and this has been the latest installment of the Maestro series with Wayne Marshall. Thank you all so much. And until next time, have a great day. Thank you, Wayne, so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Patrick. Bye, everybody.